afternoon, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Sheila-Mary Carruthers, and I have probably met most of you at various other events around the world. I have longevity in this business. My career started in 1970, and I'm not telling you that so that you can admire my plastic surgery. It's basically so that you can understand I've never not worked in this business, because I don't know how to do anything else. It's quite simple. So the fact of the matter is that I'm here to hopefully inspire you, if I get my slides right. I'm getting messages from the front here. Okay, 2019, we're talking about the world and all the traumas. If you were going to invent a fibre, I tried to think of how I should list these qualities. If you go to Woolmark.com, you'll see all the information in support of the statements we're making here. But what sort of things would you want if you were to start from nothing today? What would, assuming we're all not going to go around naked, and assuming we're all not going to buy second-hand clothes, people will continue to make new, not just for garments, but also for interiors and other end uses as yet undiscovered. What would you want in terms of a fibre? And in fact, what's happened is we've managed to produce a fibre, or nature has produced a fibre that has got all of these qualities. Now, it does all these things as well. So I don't know, I think it's very important that it was breathable and natural. I personally think in terms of the way the world's going, we have to look at this start to finish situation. And so biodegradability, big issue for me. If you can get something that's fire retardant, which wool is, it does not burn like that. Cotton will go whoosh, wool doesn't. It takes a very high temperature before it starts to actually burn. It will smolder, but you have a chance to escape. UV. Now there are facts and figures. If you're looking into this whole area of how to save the world, one of the contributions has got to be in the textiles industry. And so there's facts and figures to support all these points. And I think that's very important because you're all in the middle of this big debate. And one of the reasons is that there's a lot of sheep around. There's 71 million of them in Australia. Now, if each of those produces anything between 3 and 9 kilos of wool a year, that's quite a lot. I mean, the average piece of knitwear is about 200 grams. So one animal is really making a big contribution. One animal, assuming it's a female, also gets the next generation going. And all these animals, all they need is sun, water and grass. The land is not fed, they're not fed, they roam free. They, from this input, managed to produce a fibre between 4 and 7.5 centimetres. Now that's quite long for an actual fibre, and that length is important because you can't make short stubby things align beautifully to produce nice, smooth, soft handling. So you need the length. This word micron, take a photograph of this slide. If you don't know what it means, it's a term that's used to describe the cross-section of a fibre. My hair is about 50 micron, as is yours. So you would think your hair is quite fine. Merino wool goes from 11.5 to 24. Wool goes right up to about 35, 40, but that's wool that's used in much, of course, the situations. It's used for insulation, it's used for carpets and other end uses. But fine merino, 11.5. Now cashmere is around 14.5. Technically, it could be called cashmere. I shouldn't confuse you. But basically, it's very fine. Now you'll need that micron because that information, because 5 years from now, when somebody's trying to sell you something and they're asking this price, if you don't know what you're buying, if you think you're buying fine merino and you're buying coarse wool, you're going to not get what you pay for. And so don't be frightened to adopt technical terms and understand them. It's vital for your well-being to be knowledgeable, because that's the only way you're going to sustain your careers. Creativity is important. You're born with that. You can hone that all your life. Knowledge acquired in support of the creativity, and I'm speaking slowly and carefully because it's important, and I am your proverbial nagging mother, but trust me, I'm right. Mothers always are. Okay, environmental impact. There are really the 4 areas. And again, if you want facts and figures for wool's impact, have a look at woolmark.com. There's all this issue about what is the dreaded S word, what is sustainable. I'm actually becoming quite paranoid about the word S, sustainable word, because I know what it technically means, but lots of things are sustainable. That does not give you the answer. And I think we've got to look at everything, and in our context, it's textiles and fibres, through production, manufacturing, use, and disposal. My generation, I came out of uni thinking, oh my goodness. Yesterday I went to see the Mary Quant exhibition. I was quite horrified actually, because we loved acrylic. It was there in these floppy dresses. And having just come from the Dior exhibition to the acrylic dresses of Mary Quant, you think, how could I have been so in love with them? Because they are just a bit floppy. Because they were cheap, thin acrylic. I thought it was fab, because I'd been in stiff, ghastly wool all my life. And we thought we were going to solve all the world's problems, but we haven't. We've made the world's problems, and for which I apologise, but at the end of the day, we've also created big mounds of stuff that you guys are going to have to wait generations for it to dispose. We don't know how long some things take to biodegrade. We know how long wool does. So the point being, you've got to take each one of these areas. Now, in the production side, they do just run on, natural things like grass and sun and water. Okay, there's the issue of methane, but probably there's more of us producing that. So manufacturing is a big issue, and we've got to pay attention, and wool now is using a lot of very much more considerate chemicals. In Scotland, where I'm from, our local industry takes water in, finishes the fabrics, dyes the knitwear, and puts it out again into its source. That's how acceptable everything we're doing is. And we've done that for years, because we're Scottish, we're mean, we don't want to waste water. We've got plenty, but we don't want to waste it. Obviously, if you look at studies around use, there was a study that I have which is at least 15 years old, which will say to you, on a white cotton t-shirt, the biggest damage is done post-consumer, through washing, through disposal. We use so much water in washing everything. You wash your t-shirt every day, well, every time you wear it, all the stuff we discharge. If it's not natural fibre, other issue. And then at the end of the day, if it's, 100% something synthetic fibres haven't been long enough, around to know how long they're going to take to biodegrade. I worked for lots and lots of synthetic fibre companies. It wasn't an issue in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. Never thought about it. Now it is. Should have been then. So we've got studies where we dig wool into the ground, it takes a few months, and it's gone, and it's adding nutrients back into the soil. It's not just going, it's what it had in its core being is going back into the soil. And there are people who are growing they're taking in their products, they're putting them in, when they're finished, they take off the zips and the fastenings, they put them in flower pots, they grow herbs in them, and then they serve them in their restaurant. Completely circular is how we've got to start thinking. And because it's made of protein, that's why the wool degrades quickly, and it does not add to water pollution. And we know unless you've been asleep, you must know the issues around microfiber pollution. It's a big problem. We haven't been able to quantify it, I think, really, or we haven't thought about it, or what, suddenly we're aware. And you couldn't make this fibre up. I mean, that's worth taking a look at, but you can look at it online if you can't get a good picture, because it's a hugely complicated fibre, and because of that complexity, that's why you've got your fire retardant bit, your water repellent, the sweat removal, the felting, etc., 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 right into its very, very core, which is the wrinkle recovery and the stretch and recovery bit. And because of this complexity, what they've discovered is that skin conditions are a big problem for people. And if you use all sorts of creams, etc., if you wear 17.5 micron and finer merino next to the skin, you can reduce massively the problems created by dermatitis and eczema. To the extent that they're recommending it for babies, to swaddle a child. It's been proven, we've got the stats to prove it, because wool creates this microclimate and doesn't allow the bacteria that cause the issues to grow. It is fire retardant, so you can make lights out of it. There's quite a dramatic video online to show a room with cotton fibres and other fibres and the identical room with wool. There's nobody in the room, thankfully, but one goes up like that and there's no chance. And the other one is a slow burn eventually, and you've time to get out. And again, because of its structure, it's UV resistant, which is also vital. It's got very, very good UV. Not a problem in Scotland very often. We don't see a lot of sun. These scales, not many fibres have scales. Your hair has scales, but because it's got scales, you can felt it. And that means you can sculpt it. That means you can do all sorts of different things with it. So it has all sorts of characteristics that you can't get any other way. Very few fibres will felt as effectively as wool. And you can partially felt it. You can put on benign chemicals that will stop it felting. So you end up with a felt resist situation for the knitters or the weavers amongst you. Create things very slack. Very, knit open, weave open, print on felt resist designs, stick it in the washing machine, bits felt, bits don't. Interesting. Combine that with other techniques. That's easy to do at university and small scale, well worth looking at. You can take the tips off the scales by another chemical process, so you smooth it out. It's a bit like your hair. When you put conditioner on your hair, basically you're filling in the scales on your hair. That's why we all apply conditioner. With wool, you're taking the tips off so they don't agitate together. And the outcome is that you can create very much more lustrous fabrics. And the other thing, before I forget, in your goodie bags, there's two things that are really important. Well, there's lots of things that are important, but the two vital things, lanolin, that's just not a random kind of, oh, here's some hand cream for you. Lanolin, when you wash, sheep don't take showers, as you might have noticed. But when you wash the fibre, one of the byproducts is lanolin. So there you go, try it. It's such a clever animal. It produces lanolin for your hands and your skin. If you're lanolin allergic, don't use it. And the other thing that's in there is a little calculator. And this, I should have brought one up, but it's a little plastic thing. That's it. There you go. That's vital. Guard that with your life, because you will need to know the difference in counts across the different systems. You don't understand count numbering systems. You should understand count numbering systems, but some of you won't at the moment. It's a handy way of saying what works on what gauge, what count you should use on what, across all the different things. That you can't get them. I've got students that will beg me for them, so consider those very lucky. Don't lose them. And remember, you got them from the Woolmark. So it's got stretch. That's why it's used. It's got stretch and it's got recovery. You can stretch it up to about 20% and it recovers. It's jolly clever. We've done a lot of work with the denim business because we've all got jeans, and as you know, they are merino. They are 100% cotton, generally speaking, indigo dyed cotton and undyed cotton. Not great in the winter, so what we've done is replace the undyed cotton with undyed merino, and massive difference to the behaviour of the garment, massive difference to the comfort of the garment, better on the dear legs because we don't get this lovely abrading effect. So all in all, beneficial. And of course you can then have merino plus other fibres. We are developing some merino and graphene. I don't know how familiar you are with graphene. It's a new discovery. Manchester University, only a few years ago, suddenly clever people, it's from graphite. And graphite's a naturally, it's an allotrope of graphite apparently. In other words, it's graphite in a different form. And I think they got simply bits of sellotape and they started to pull graphite off in layers, and they realized they could get it so thin. Now this is an amazing thing because graphene, it's got extraordinary qualities, and it's washable, it's flexible, it's natural, it's biodegradable, but it's incredibly strong. It complements the wool in terms of the UV. For superior strength situations, it offers all these things. There are lots of companies, particularly the Italians, have really got into it for ski wear. Originally, we were looking at only blends, 2 yarns twisted together, but now they've got graphene in a form that we can actually make an intimate blend, which means wool fibre and graphene can be blended together. There's a slight downside. You only need a tiny bit of graphene. The issue with graphene is at the moment, it doesn't come in a range of colours. It comes in one colour, and a bit like the Henry Ford car, it's black. So pure white fabrics are as yet an issue. But as you only need a tiny bit of graphene, and the majority, it'll be like 0. something or other %. But watch out for that, because that fibre is going somewhere, and blended with wool, you've almost got, tremendous opportunities. So, nylon, it's used, you're probably all wearing a bit of nylon somewhere on your body. Merino Cordura is a nylon fibre which has been designed specially for abrasion resistance. 90% of the backpacks in this room may not be branded, but they'll be of a similar ilk to Cordura. If you want abrasion resistance with the comfort of wool, then you'll be following the likes of this company called Micro-encapsulation, and they've combined the two. They've got areas within the garment where you need abrasion resistance. Obviously, if you're going to be as active as these guys are, it's way out of my comfort zone. Bikes, activity, no. So anyway, lots of possibilities of combining things like Cordura or Dyneema. Dyneema is another interesting fibre. It's actually technically, it's polyethylene, and it's been designed to be cut resistant. So for example, this is a pretty hideous slide, but it's used a lot in the industry, like in the kitchens, commercial kitchens. You get Cordura gloves and things because a lot of chefs have very short fingers. So, you know, but it's used here. Levi did a program with us because they wanted it for motorbikers, you know, for a bit of cut resistance when you fall off your motorbike. Very sensible. So you get the benefits of the wool and you get the benefits of the cut resistance and the tear resistance. So that's why you need to understand the benefits of fibres, because now we can't afford just as randomly hook things up together. It's got to be a reason. There's got to be a reason why you're going to add to the value, to the cost perhaps of a garment, and you need to know it so you can justify it. And by the way, designers never ever play around with things. My very first job, I got a row for playing around from the chairman. He said, well, I don't pay you to play around. We always are developing our ideas, so start making sure your language counts. You need to be developing your ideas. And then you can go into this whole other area of the truly synthetic fibres. This is a para-aramid, and its brand name is known as Kevlar. And Kevlar is, again, it's cut and tear resistant, and people have used it in combination with a merino base layer. Again, the suggested activity is roughy toughy guys outside, or women outside. Another of these aramids, it's called a meta-aramid, which is a brand name Nomex. And Armadillo, for instance, used the Nomex as the outer layer for firemen, and it really, that's what all the Formula One drivers wear, because it doesn't burn. I think eventually, but it gives them tremendous protection. But if you're combining it with merino for comfort underneath, you've got a pretty foolproof situation. And then you can look at things like polyvinyl alcohol. Polyvinyl alcohol, PVA, not to be confused with PVC, which is what your plastic coats are made of, PVA. You combine that with merino, you knit or weave it together, you wash it at 40 degrees and the PVA dissolves. Lace, instant. Used a lot in the trade for lots of purposes in the knitwear industry where you're wanting to knit multiple ribs for a garment. You join them all together with Solveron, that's a brand name, and then you wash them all and they're all separated. So anytime you want something to fall apart in washing, merino and PVA, Solveron being one of the brands. It's readily available, it's not an expensive yarn. Apparently, crabs and all crustaceans are very rich in polysaccharides. Didn't know that, but they are. Polysaccharides are a massive, massive, massive around on the planet. So merino wool chitin, which is what's found in crabs, people have been making fibres from it, and we've been combining it with merino wool to have the two sort of different qualities, the healing reduction, the clotting, odor resistance, all that's very complementary to the merino wool. And as I said before, we've got this whole issue, of course, around biodegradability. Here we have synthetic polymers. They've been created from plant-based, mainly from corn starting points. So we are getting to the stage where synthetic polymers are going to be biodegradable. But there's lots of other traditional things, such as this is a fibre from the lotus flower. In Myanmar, they had a lot of traditional textiles. It's a very fibrous leaf. I can imagine it's a pretty tedious quality. You're actually having to separate the fibres and then you're having to wash them and then they weave with them. But been around for many centuries and producing beautiful silk-like fabrics. Now looking at bees, because they spin silk as well. This is very much in the research stage, but interesting because we're now able, and I hope Helene's going to be able to talk more about this and explain to us how we go from knowing that the insect does that and how we synthesize that and mimic the biomimicry. This is a very, very sideline thing, but this clam grows fibres to attach it to a rock. You've probably seen it when you've been diving off the sea in Italy. And they grow quite big. And for years, local communities harvested this fibre and spun it. Now everybody's dying out, so nobody's doing it anymore. But technically, in other words, you could put merino wool with this byssus, and it produces a beautiful lustrous fibre. And I like this one. I think we're now beginning to realise that naturally grown ingredients can offer you all sorts of finishing benefits. There's a lot of study being done. These are only just some of them to say antimicrobial, antibacterial, textile solutions, literally, to help enhance your merino wool. Of course, we're suddenly saying, oh gosh, oh yeah, I believe you can get fibres from coffee beans. You can make fibres from anything cellulosic. And we're beginning to think, okay, we waste a lot of coffee grounds. If you reprocess them, you can reprocess them into textiles. It's the same principle as the cellulose found in trees to make viscose, to make lyocell, etc. It's the same with banana leaves, it's the same with extra milk, it's the same with oranges. I can't tell you whether that's eco-friendly in the long run. It is a waste product, so it saves cutting down trees. It makes a similar product, and if we get enough of the whole of it, then I think it will be a way forward. We're looking at squid. Now, how the heck anybody worked out that a squid had these particular qualities? They were able to isolate the genes from it. They were able then to recreate these genes. And then they were able to make, through a process of biofermentation, make the powder into a polymer and extrude it. I'm afraid I can't tell you whether that's a good or a bad thing, but I think it's the point being, you guys need to absorb this information so that you understand what's coming and what you can see can complement the benefits of what fibres like merino that exist now. There's a lot of people in America are growing bioengineering things from collagen. So they're producing vegan leather, in effect. Lots of opportunities and end uses for that. I like the spiders. And I don't like spiders at all. I loathe spiders. but I like the outcome of the spider. That's been commercialized by people like both Textiles, but what I liked here was about Airbus. Obviously, flying, not good. We all want to go on holiday, unfortunately, and we can't go by banana boat for 20 years. So the fact of the matter is, we're going to have to get lighter weight planes. Imagine if we could synthesize the spider silk and we could knit it on one of these vast complete knitting machines and knit parts for the wings. Why not? That's what you guys are going to have to come up with. And then you could put wool on the inside so it's comfortable, warm, insulating, and it's not a fire risk. And if you know all these things, you can put them together. That's where your future lies, because we've all got frocks. And so thinking about all these qualities is where you're going to go with it. And mushroom spores, you know, taking biomimicry to create seats and furniture and looking at nature's benefits is going to help you to get the way forward. There's a Japanese company who basically created a fibre that's the same structure as a butterfly wing, so it's iridescent. Haven't seen it actually a huge amount in reality, but that sort of technology and scientific interest is what you've got to get your brains going around. So once you've got all this knowledge, you've then got to put it to use in the supply chain. Quite a few people ask me for this slide. Take a picture. This is your future chance, okay? I reckon there's at least 14 industries. You think at the moment you're doing garment design, weaving, knitting, printing, marketing, whatever. You're not. You're designers with a specialisation to demonstrate your honours integrity. And then you can go anywhere you fancy if you get the knowledge. Don't expect knowledge to come to you. It's so easy now. It's all out there. That famous Tinternet's amazing. I mean, imagine, I didn't even have a telephone. I was at university. And this shows how things have changed. In Galashiels, we had an outside loo and cold running water. I thought I was in heaven. I had 3 years on my own away from my parents who put me in digs to start with. And I had a fab time. Now, I'm not that old, but that's only in the past 50 years, how nobody in Gala has an outside loo. There's now a blue plaque on this outside loo. Sheila-Mary used this loo. Not very often. Anyway. Okay, sorry. I digress. There's the 14 industries. That's the one you really want. Go for it. And you can't all be in the 14, but anyway, I can put it up later. 1, 2, 3, colour, fibre, yarn. They're all separate industries. They're all opportunities for design-led people. The yarn industry needs designers to say, we should be combining this with this with this. How have we not done this before? And it's just as design interesting and creative as anything else. Colour, it's a massive industry. What's the first thing you see? Colour. Industries, fabric manufacturing, and they're all separate. Weaving, knitting, circular, non-wovens, warp industry. They're all big, massive opportunities, and they all need designers. But they can't just have designers going and saying, I think I fancy this or that. It's, I want this, that, and the next thing, and could we, and can we, and talking to the technicians, and how can we push boundaries? How can we make 3D fabrics? The 3D weaving industry, that's going to be a big, exciting future. You should be able to just create things, and then sew them. We want to make them in one process. The finishing industry, I bet a lot of you, unless you were at MIT last year or you're lucky with your university, haven't been through a finishers. You need to come to Gala. We've got one just next door. And it's fascinating. Most fabrics, most garments look nothing until they're finished. And without the industry, the fabric manufacturing side of it wouldn't happen. And you can radically change something. If you've ever seen a piece of fine merino come off a knitting machine and before it's washed, it's often greasy. It's in the natural lanolin. And then it has to be washed to get rid of all the dirt that happens when you put something through a factory. Finishing transforms, and you need to know about it. It's a whole lecture in itself, so we won't go into it now. We've only got, most people say to me, I'm a designer and I'm in fashion, and what they mean by that is this garment industry. It's industry 9. 8 industries have gone before. So this is obviously the general apparel side, but then there's the active side, which of course, the specialisation opportunities there are tremendous. You know, there's a real opportunity for you guys, but they need to have raw material knowledge. You can't go there and say, well, I can draw you another pair of tracksuit bottoms. And that's where the likes of WPC, the Woolmark Performance Challenge competition, comes in, because really and truly, get an idea, see how you could bring them all together, put them together digitally, and win yourself 10,000 euros. It's not that tricky. And you've got plenty time to do it. Trust me, I'm a mother. And a granny. Knitwear industry. This is a separate industry, but I think I'm slightly biased because I've done a lot in the knitwear industry. Machines now will knit you complete everything. So the garment making industry better watch out, because you can just knit everything. And with all the functionality that you want, tremendous opportunity. You want it to have merino on the inside, so it's good for your skin. You want it to have something else on the outside. You want it to have cordura here, so it doesn't rub your bag. You want to have your phone pocket knitted in here, blah, blah, blah. Done, sorted. Shoes, as we know, I seem to have skipped aside. There we go. The interior side of things. I love chairs that are not chairs, that are made from fabrics. You know, it's so easy. A few bolts and a bit of felt. I'm minimising design effort, but it's a great possibility. And that's a resin and a wool chair. But we don't think out the box. I'm wearing the same garment that I wore when I was at uni. Before I went to uni, in the mid-60s, I had a pale blue version of this in big, heavy wool. I looked like I don't know what. I thought it was fab. And a purple version. I thought I was fab in that. And so what's new? Nothing. It's just cotton or wool, you know, nothing's changed. We need you guys to get going. And the only way you're going to do it and move us out of this is through innovating, through knowledge. Shoes, okay, we started here. They're all knitwear machinery. They're knitted to shape. The waste is minimized. Everything's a benefit. You can put fibres in certain parts and get all the benefits. But none of this matters unless you've sold it. Now, you can hardly keep pace with the way of selling now. And I'm not just talking about the internet. Galeries Lafayette have opened up a new department store. So wait a minute, okay. Amazon Go opened up a new store. You know, we all know about all these things. Samsung are trying to sell you something without selling you something, just by brainwashing you of the space. The same with, you know, Selfridges and their perfume. The same with Nike. You go and play baseball downtown in, you know, Soho in New York. It's all about getting the message across. Really hard for you to keep going. Communications, Industry 13, I would encourage you to pay attention to that very first one. At this stage in your lives, get rid of all the bad things online that you have got pictures of. Your trip in Ibiza falling off the pavement, ditch it. HR, now look at that first. Doesn't really matter about your CV. If you're falling off the pavement, they don't want you. Cruel, I maybe exaggerate. I do exaggerate, but I'm trying to get the point across. Clean up brand me. Get the CV done. I spoke to 2 people today and they had just about to finish and they hadn't written their full CVs. We're going for our CV. What happens if Edward Crutchley turns around and says, I want 4 people to come and work for me. Have you got your CV ready? Oh no, I'm going to do it next week. Get it sorted. Sort out your social media. And don't forget the newspaper and the traditional press. They still exist. I think, what is the future going to be? Yeah, okay. All these things are definitely going to happen. Merino wool has got longevity. We've got studies. We don't say, it's a company that doesn't say anything lightly. They have got studies to say that if you've got a piece of merino wool in your wardrobe, it's X times more likely to last there for 5 years compared to other things that are just jettisoned. That has to be part of the equation. None of us are going to solve this planet problem with one. There isn't one solution. It's everybody taking their own individual steps. It's the lights going off. It's keeping a garment when you thought you were going to. It's mending a hole. It's changing a button. It's all those things. I do think, however, that there will be, I hope for your sake, there'll be garments that can grow on you. Why not? You know, or grow with you. You know, why do you buy pregnancy clothes? They should be able to grow with you. Things like that, or heal you if you've got a sore arm. Instead of taking the pills and confusing, why are they not, you know, healing and doing that? You know, these, you're going to have such joint problems. I have not been doing mobile phones that long. By the time you get, look what happens. And I've got a really horrible mouse finger. You have to find a way to solve that, because you're going to, it's very painful, arthritis, I tell you. No idea. Anyway, okay, this ain't a mistake, because this is blank. I don't know what Helen's going to tell us, what she's discovered, what you're going to do. I do know about all the things I've talked to you about, the wool and all the other opportunities, but this is yours. This is what you're going to be filling in. So this time next year, I'll be gone, you'll be here. These are the unimagined options. And I really very, very firmly believe that if you take knowledge on board, which hopefully this lecture and then the other 3 lectures are going to be about, you'll be so much better equipped to go onwards and upwards. I do think that this is, as I say, I've worked for the big fibre companies, the synthetic fibre companies. I couldn't be writing this slide for anybody else, because there are other natural fibres around, but a lot of them have big hang-ups. You know, some use a huge amount of water, and we know the environmental damage. We know what's happened to the Aral Sea. It's gone. Not good. The sheep don't need watered. So I believe the circularity thing, people talk about circularity, pure new wool, or any wool, is actually very good from that perspective. It starts there in the ground, it ends up back in the ground, and it adds nutrients to the whole equation. And what fibre could that possibly be? And those, by the way, are the logos that Stuart was talking about. It was designed over 50 years ago. It's got longevity. There's very few other brands that haven't tweaked their logos. That's an untweaked, it comes in various versions, but it's virtually, I'm looking at Rebecca to see if I'm more or less right, but it's virtually an untweaked logo. That's something, that says a lot about a company. There you go. Now then, look, it's a moving sheep. At first I thought it was a really static old boring sheep, and then I realised it just suddenly moves. It's a really nice little sheep.